Shannon Young is a healthcare reporter at Politico New York, and she joins us now to discuss. Shannon, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. So what are some of the details of this agreement, and what were some of the big major sticking points for lawmakers to get this across the finish line?
Right. Well, thanks for having me. This has been a deal that's been in the works now for the last several years. They've been struggling to get it past the finish line for an array of issues. Most notably recently was they've been at a quote-unquote impasse over how to address impaired driving. So, how to detect what level of THC should be in somebody's blood for them to be able to be arrested for driving under the influence. They kind of decided to just let the regular traffic laws apply for right now while they study it and see if there's a better level there. Other details of the bill is one of the biggest things for the sponsors was to get a significant amount of revenue funding to go to communities that have been disproportionately affected by drug laws. So 40% of the revenue from tax sales is going to go to disproportionately affected communities. 40% is going to go to public education in schools, and 20% is going to go for substance abuse treatment, prevention, education. Let's see, other details of the bill. It allows for home grow, a handful of plants, up to 6 plants. And as you said, you can possess up to 3 ounces. It's something that, like I said, has been a long time coming, and advocates have been working on this for years and years in Albany.
All right, so let's talk about how the taxes are going to be worked into all of this. Obviously, there's the regular state taxes in there. There are going to be local state taxes as well. Also, I've read, depending on how many milligrams of THC are either in regular flower or edible, that too is going to be charged a tax based on how much THC is included in that. Explain how the taxes are going to work here, Shannon.
Right. So the way it breaks down is it's a 9% tax, and then a 4% tax on top of that, and then, as you said, additional tax based on the weight of the drug. I think communities may also be able to add additional taxes on top of that, but it's basically, the way to think of it is about a 13% base tax, and then depending on how much you have and what type of product you have, then it can vary a little bit by slight amount. I think it's like 1% per certain amount of milligram.
Okay, so let's also talk about what was probably likely one of the sticking points in a lot of this as to why we haven't seen legalization in this state earlier. And it most likely had to be with how communities of color who have disproportionately been affected by marijuana in this state are treated. Also, the expungement of records and past convictions. How did that all get solved, and basically what happens here with that?
Right. So as I said earlier, that was one of the biggest sticking points for the sponsors. Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes from Buffalo, that has been her biggest priority with this legislation. And she drew a line in the sand very early on, saying, I'm not going to agree to anything unless it has a significant amount of funding for these communities, expungement of records or resentencing for people who have been convicted of marijuana-related crimes that would now be legal under this new law. It was really important to the sponsors that they really address these communities. There's also a guarantee that a certain percentage of licenses granted go to minority and women-owned businesses. Just there's a lot there. So there's funding, there's prevention education, and expungement. So
okay, and Shannon, we should also note, this isn't going to happen. Legalization is not going to happen overnight. You're not going to see, new stores essentially open up tomorrow as a result of this. When do lawmakers actually fully expect legalized cannabis to be a thing here in New York that people can actually partake in it then?
Right. So the sponsors tell me the plan is that once the bill is signed into law, that marijuana possession will be legal. So if you already have marijuana, if you went over the border and had it, then you're not going to be pulled over. You're not going to be arrested for it. If you have a plant at home, you're allowed to use it, to smoke it. But they're not expecting the actual marketplace to be up and running for at least a year and a half. I've heard the target date is about 2023. So we'll see. There's still a lot of details that have to be worked out. There's going to be a whole new Office of Cannabis Management that's going to be in charge of setting up things, dealing with the licensing issues. and regulating the drugs and the sales and the taxing market. And that also includes changes to the state's medicinal marijuana markets and the cannabis hemp programs, which are already up and running. So, it's not going to be, like you said, an overnight thing, but if for some reason you already have marijuana, then you're not going to be, arrested or criminalized for it.
And Shannon, we should note the governor is saying, the state might reap about $350 million in tax benefits from this, which obviously for a state who is deeply in debt right now, that $350 million really great here. But the bigger question is, with such a large state and so many nearby states, New Jersey, Massachusetts, others have already legalized the product. What took New York so long to legalize it here?
I think the biggest answer to that is Governor Andrew Cuomo. For years and years, he opposed marijuana legalization. Then a few years ago, started sort of changing his tune about it. But then, if the state was going to legalize it, he wanted a big say in how that's going to happen. And, we almost gotten to this point a few times in the last 3 years. We've gotten almost to the finish line. And then at the last minute, talks fell apart just because the sponsors and the governor really couldn't hash out those final details. And so this time around, it's different, right? Cuomo's facing a bunch of scandals. And so he's a little bit more willing to work with lawmakers right now. And lawmakers are more willing to sort of stand their ground and press him on things. And it's a big political victory for Cuomo if he can do this and take some of the heat off his back.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Hopefully he thinks that this is going to blunt the scandals that he's been under right now. Shannon Young, healthcare reporter at Politico New York. Great to have you here this morning, Shannon. Thank you so very much for joining us.